Hello and welcome to this week's GCN Tech Clinic, where we aim to answer your tech-related questions. You can submit your questions using the hashtag AskGCNTech in the comments section down below and on other videos and social media as well. So first up this week, we've got a question from Jake Henry, who says, not sure if it's a tech question, I think this is a tech question, but how can you become a pro bike mechanic? Well, Jake, it's a good question, and we're going to assume that you're starting from scratch and you've not even started being a mechanic yet. So the first step is to get a job in a bike shop as a mechanic. There's often courses that can be run when you're in a bike shop. In the UK, we have SciTech courses, but there's other ones in other countries as well. And then you become qualified as a bike mechanic. At the same time as doing that, I would also suggest that you get involved in the local racing scene and mechanic for local teams. This might be done on a sort of weekend voluntary basis at first, because there isn't a huge amount of money in local racing and cycling, but then you're gaining valuable experience. And eventually, through networking and getting really good at being a mechanic and having that race mechanic experience, opportunities can come your way where you can actually get a job being a pro mechanic. So that's the way most of them end up becoming pro mechanics. I hope that answers your question, and good luck if you want to become a pro mechanic. Cool job. Next question is from Fariz Ramat Dharmavan. Sorry if I've got your name wrong, Fariz, but he says, disc brakes, do they perform better than rim brakes? In stage 1 of the Tour de France, lots of riders crashed using top-end disc brakes. And someone else has replied, Guido Spango says, on very slippy roads, it's the grip of the tyres that matter, not the quality of the brakes. So yes, I know the crashes that you're referring to in stage 1 of the Tour de France. If you've not seen them, then well, you can still view the stages in full on the race pass if you have access where you live in your region. But the crashes in those instances were down to the road surface being incredibly slippy, incredibly greasy, and that isn't then down to braking. Braking isn't what stops that crash, that's tyre grip. And when you get diesel and oil on the roads and then they become wet, those really smooth roads in that part of the world can become like an ice rink, and nothing is going to stop you. That said, disc brakes, without question, they offer far greater modulation. And so something that can cause you to slip when you're riding along is if you lock your wheels, the wheel then can lose traction and then you can slide out. And disc brakes, you can lock the wheels much more easily, they have much more force, but you have a greater feel of where that locking point comes. The modulation in the disc brake is without doubt superior. The other thing to consider is that in the wet, in a racing situation, a disc brake versus a carbon rim brake is far more enjoyable to ride on, far less stressful to ride on, because when you apply the brakes to a carbon rim in the wet, first there's nothing, as the rim clears the water from the brake pads clear the water from the rim, and then the brake suddenly engages. It's quite disconcerting, whereas on a disc brake you have that sort of still instant consistent braking. This is something you can learn to get used to, and we've seen pros use rim brakes for years and years and years and get used to it. The problem comes when you're racing in a group with disc brakes and rim brakes. If the guy in front of you has disc brakes and stops in the wet and his brakes instantly engage, yours don't instantly engage if you're on rim brakes, that can then cause an issue for you and mean that you might have to back off the wheel a bit further and stuff like that. So while those particular instances were down to tyre grip and not braking, I would say that there is a definite advantage to using disc brakes in those conditions, just not on wheel traction. That's a separate thing. Next question is from Blackstar13. He says, would it be possible to install a SRAM Force levers to a SRAM rival 1x group set? I'd like to upgrade from 1x to 2x as well in the future. I always find myself running out of gear options. Hi Blackstar13, cool name. You shouldn't have any problems here. You should be able to use a lot of components off your rival group set into Force. But if you're going to be changing from 2x to 1x, you're going to need a new chain set. You're also going to need a front derailleur, and you're also going to need new shifters, because you're going to need the left-hand shifter now as well to do the front derailleur, and not have a dummy shifter that you have in place of a 1x setup. Other than that, you'd just be keeping your cassette and your front mech. So, yeah, you'll basically be changing the whole group set anyway, but yeah, you should be able to use those existing parts. Good luck with that. And if you do upgrade your bike, submit it into upgrades using the GCN app. Might feature it in the tech show. Next question is from Marcus Harrington. He says, I've inherited a giant TCR Advanced 2 Carbon, but he's only got the forks and the frame. I'm lost on what to buy for the rest of the bike. What do I need? Where would I start? He's not on a big budget. Well, that is a cool project though to have before you. It's always exciting when you've got like a bike build thing, and just think of how cool it'll be when you finish. I tell you what, right, if you're not on a big budget and you're trying to keep it to your costs down, bit of a geeky thing, but pretty cool. Set up a spreadsheet and then make a list of everything you need, and then also have like a budget in mind, and then just tick off things as you've done them. And also maybe just, if you're on a budget as well, stick to just getting a couple of things, each month or whatever, whenever you can sort of afford them. But come up with a list of everything you're going to need. So it sounds like you're going to need, saddle, wheels, group set, and then also, I'm not sure if you need a seat post and things like that, but those are the bits are worth looking for. I'd have a look at an existing giant TCR, it's the same bike, and that'll give you an idea of what you're missing. And this applies to anyone in the same situation. Look at the complete bike build and have a look at what you're missing. And then also go on eBay and see what you can find on there, and you'll be able to find lots of useful bits, I'd imagine. But yeah, good luck with that, and also make sure you submit it to upgrades. Sounds like a great one. Tim69_SMCV, catchy name. He says, is there any aero advantages to a hairstyle like yours, Ollie? Yes, there definitely is, at least 13 watts, we measured it. Anyway, moving on. Barry Hale says, I have a slightly older bike that I want to use for a turbo trainer setup. It has SRAM Apex on it with an 1128 cassette, but I can't find the same cassette for sale anymore. Can I use the equivalent newer SRAM cassette on the turbo in its place? Good question. And yes, sometimes manufacturers stop making older cassettes. But the good thing is SRAM and Shimano are compatible and interchangeable. So if you can find a Shimano cassette that is the right speed. So I'm not sure if you have 9, 10 or 11 speed, but it doesn't matter. You can get an equivalent cassette in Shimano, and that will work as well if you can't find a SRAM one. And then other brands as well are also compatible. Just to be aware, Campagnolo cassettes, they're not as compatible because the spline is different on the back, and the teeth ramping's a bit different as well. Also, top tip for anyone upgrading or changing a cassette for an indoor trainer, don't get an expensive one, just get one that's like the right number of speeds. So I need an 11 speed cassette on mine. I go for a Shimano 105, not a really expensive, SRAM Red or Dura Ace one. There's no need on an indoor trainer, and it stays clean, and it's really good and works fine, so do that. Next question is Rodrigo Landeros, who says, I'm thinking of buying some hookless tubeless wheels and tyres. But looking at manufacturers' recommended tyres, I've become aware that not all tyres will work. What tyres do you recommend? And I want 28 millimeters. Yeah, good question. Hookless rims are growing in popularity, and more are coming along. Same with tyres, but at the moment there aren't a huge number of hookless tubeless tyres. There's a lot of tubeless road tyres out there, but yeah, not many hookless ones. Now, fortunately, J-Pow did a really good video that was an explainer on this and the compatibility. So I'm gonna throw to that now.
Tubeless tires have a reinforced bead on them that helps with the sealing, and it makes them sturdy enough to be able to hold the tire in place on a hookless wheel. If you use a regular clincher, the seal is not going to be strong enough between the tire and the rim, and you can blow the tire off or roll it, which is super dangerous. So hooked rims work with regular clinchers and tubeless tires, but hookless are for tubeless only.
Well, hopefully that answered your question, but in short, the take-home message is do not run a non-hookless tyre on a hookless rim. It can be dangerous. You risk blowing the tyre off the rim, which you definitely don't want to happen when you're riding along. It's not going to end well. But one tyre that is hookless compatible that I can recommend, that I've been running and I absolutely love, is the new Pirelli P0 TLR, which came out not too long ago. But also Mitchelton Scott used that tyre as well. So they'll probably be using that in the Tour de France on some stages. Stay tuned. But that's all we've got time for this week, unfortunately. So sorry if I've not been able to answer your question. It's always a pleasure answering your guys' questions. So make sure you keep them coming in using the hashtag AskGCNTech, and I'll see you next time. Cheerio.